The first Wonder Woman movie was one of the better attempts by DC to rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Patty Jenkins had a clear vision for the character, and Gal Gadot played her beautifully. And the World War I setting helped it to stand out from the crowd. The sequel had universally bad reviews, which is why I've avoided it until now. But hey, who cares what reviewers think? Except me, obviously. I'm a reviewer now. Keep forgetting. Like the first film, this one opens with young Diana in Themyscira, in an extended action sequence in which she takes part in the Amazon version of the Olympics, or possibly Total Wipeout. It's perfectly entertaining, but it feels out of place with the rest of the movie, like a 10-minute short before the main feature. Perhaps it would have worked better if they'd split it up into segments and scattered them throughout the movie, like flashbacks Diana was having at relevant moments. But the only lesson she learns is not to take shortcuts, which is hardly relevant anyway. The main body of the movie takes part in 1984. As you may have guessed from the title, Diana is still obsessed with Steve Trevor after 66 years. But a magical stone brings him back to life. This was somewhat controversial at the time, as people claimed he was taking over the body of an innocent man without his consent. But the movie itself kind of hand-waves all that away, making it kind of vague exactly what happens to bring Steve back to life. And there's really no suggestion that there's an innocent man inside Steve's head screaming to be let out. But even so, bringing back Steve Trevor serves little purpose. Chris Pine still has great chemistry with Gal Gadot, but the unreal nature of their relationship means it's nowhere near as satisfying this time around. Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord is the main villain. Normally I'm a fan, but here he seems bizarrely miscast, with a ridiculous hairstyle that looks more like a wig, and a dodgy suit, playing an obnoxious businessman. His performance goes for comedy rather than villainy, so it's hard to take him seriously as a threat. And his son is played by an actor who looks absolutely nothing like him. Now, obviously mixed-race families exist, but they never even show the mother in this one. So it is a struggle to believe in that whole father-son relationship, which is unfortunate as it is needed for the big climax of the movie. Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva is the other main antagonist. I'd hesitate to call her a villain, as she is pretty sympathetic for most of the movie, going from a clumsy, friendless nerd to a stunning vamp, in much the same way as Michelle Pfeiffer did in Batman Returns. She's a friend and ally to Diana for most of the movie, only turning into the cheater towards the end, which is by far the least convincing aspect, not least because of the dodgy makeup they put her in. It's also one of the rare movies where none of the bad guys get any comeuppance whatsoever. They're both left to carry on with their lives as if nothing had happened, which just feels very odd. I guess they were both corrupted by the power of the Wish Stone, but Max Lord at least definitely deserves to go to prison. So although the story isn't up to much, there's still plenty of decent action scenes, from the armoured car chase through the desert, to the extended White House fight, where Diana gets to use her whip and crown in various unusual ways. It's just a shame she never gets to have a proper fight scene with Pedro Pascal, who would be more than capable of it, but it's just not part of his character. Like I said, miscast. The whole 1980s setting is strangely downplayed. The soundtrack is mainly a traditional classical score, with only the occasional snatch of 1980s pop music. Normally most movies and TV shows, set anywhere from the 1950s onwards, are packed full of pop hits from the time, and the fact that this isn't feels like a deliberate attempt to go against that. But I'm not sure it works. It just makes the whole movie feel kind of bland and forgettable. More relevant is the Cold War setting, with Max Lord's antics almost causing the start of World War III. But this does feel like similar territory to several of the X-Men movies, which were set in similar time periods. Overall, the whole movie just feels completely inessential. The whole wish-granting storyline makes it all feel rather insubstantial and dreamlike. Diana's whole character development involves getting one last chance to say goodbye to a lost love, which is more something you'd expect from a weepy romantic drama than a big summer blockbuster. And the complete lack of consequences at the end just leaves you wondering what the point of the whole thing was. The action scenes are decent, and Kristen Wiig's performance is worth seeing, but otherwise it's just not worth it. Plans for a third movie have been recently cancelled, and you can see why. Maybe it's time they gave someone other than Patty Jenkins a chance. But there's no reason they can't keep Gal Gadot around. she still does a fine job, and given better material, there's no reason she can't excel in the role again. That's it for now. If you've made it this far, you may want to subscribe. Or you can check out the link to one of my other movie reviews. I'll be back here next week with something completely different. Until then, goodbye.